Namaste and welcome to our continuing series, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, The Early Years. And today we are honored to have Bhatti with us. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bhatti, did you know all the people in your book?
Yes.
You knew them all?
I read them all.
I see.
I think most of them. Just let me
Surely.
have a look.
The book is called Among the Not So Great. And it's filled with wonderful humor.
Surely all these, I knew them all. Only her, I have seen her but I have not met her personally. She was always with the mother, Chinmay.
Chinmay, yes.
She passed away there only, but I have never met her.
Was Chinmay
Dara's brother, sister.
Dara's sister?
She is Dara.
His sister. Okay. I knew another Chinmay who was the sister of Arvindam Maheshwari.
Yes. There is
Different Chinmay.
Chinmay.
This is an older Chinmay, yes. So this Manibai, it's a wonderful story about him, isn't it?
Yes.
What can you tell us about him?
Much of it, most of it I have written there.
Yeah, but I want to hear it from your own voice because people are interested in hearing from you.
So this Manibai, when we did meet him, he was he was a big man with bushy eyebrows. He used to live in Amba Bhikshu garden here.
I see.
And do some garden work and all. But we used to go there and he would give us some guava or something in those days.
Yeah.
And then he originally is come from East Africa.
Yes.
He was a postmaster there. And his wife, Taraben, you may have seen her, I'm not sure. She used to live in Nantai.
Nantai.
In that corner room, she used to live. A short, pretty lady. She used to work in the mother's kitchen.
Yes.
Yes. And
so how did he get involved in being a smithy?
so he came over from East Africa and he came over with one extra wife also. in this sense, there was one Leela Ben. She also worked in the mother's kitchen. She wanted to come over to India, in East Africa, and but her people would not want her to go. So when he got married to her, he being her husband,
Could take her.
yeah. So he brought her over, and then he had nothing to do with them. He came over and in the beginning where he worked, when I saw him, he used to work he was a big man, he wanted work. The Smithy, where the present post office, our ashram post office, a room there, it was our Smithy. So he used to wield a sledgehammer. He wanted hard work. Or he would go and work in the bakery also sometimes. And with all this hard work, I mentioned that he used to, in the old time we had loaves of bread, which is the largest thing it used to go like that.
Big loaf.
Big loaf. See, they cut it, come to 36 slices. Naturally, the middle ones are little big, larger. The end one is small, but it comes to about 36 slices. So he would eat one loaf.
Just the bread?
Well, the milk, they would give him usual what everybody gets. So he would take a kuja of water and keep it and soak the bread and eat that. And he used to work in the smithy also. So.
But he was very strict, huh? He wouldn't do any work for someone if they didn't have a chit from mother.
That most of the people at that time, they didn't go and have life like that. There were strict rules and so like it mentioned there, that there was a lock which was which got stuck. They could not.
Yes.
So as he was working in the smithy and he had the locksmith also, he was.
Oh.
So he had to get it open. So he said, no, chit. Mother's chit. But that time it was not easy to go and get the mother. And then they cannot wait to start the work in the bakery. So somebody broke open that lock. So he was annoyed, but then he reported. But I think Amritada or somebody came and said, Mother has told it is all right. So he was quiet then. So he was he used to, after leaving Amba Bhikshu and do some work there.
I used to go to Amba Bhikshu's garden.
Yes, but
now it's no more, I think.
It is there, now it's become a building complex.
A residential place.
Yes, residential. Yes. That was the garden, there was a big place it was.
Yeah.
So it's purely garden. In those days, if you cross the boulevard, it was all countryside sort of thing.
Yeah.
So then he shifted over because he was doing this work and all. Once during the war, when the war started, he took Srivandaspana. Others also went from here. They joined the war.
Oh.
So he went to Bombay there, and things I gathered was that he went to enlist himself. Then they said, no, you cannot. They examined, he had appendicitis, said. So they said, you have to, and it's not in a nice condition, you have to operate. He said, no, unless mother says no operation. So those days there were no phones and all this. Telegram was sent and telegram went back saying blessings. It took 2 days or whatever. But when the doctor re-examined, they found it has subsided, the whole thing.
Amazing. So was he able to join then?
But he actually, I don't think he enlisted after that. He took, and I don't know why he did it. He took some basket of mango and started selling it there. And he did that for a while. Then he returned. And after coming back here, there was no more smithy here. So he wanted some place. And by then we had, ashram had expanded. They had this garden in Lafoshire, what's it called?
Yes, Lafoshire Garden.
Lafoshire. So he went and lived there.
Was that other fellow there then? And the American guy?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But nowadays there is from the main road, you go off, there is a tarred road there. In those days it was all, even when we went, it used to be sandy road. You would hardly ride a cycle, you had to just push it and go sometime. So he used to live there in a small hut. He was like a hermit. A hut probably 8 feet by 12 feet.
Oh.
With this coconut keith roof. And a small door you had to enter inside there. And what he had was one string tied across. A few of his clothes were given ashram, and he himself used to, this ashram used to give a thin towel-like thing, gamcha. He stitched that in to wear extra if he wants to be a little warmer. And his duty was for the night. Night duty. He was a night watchman, sort of.
Oh.
So he lived in that hut, and there was those, the Indian rope cots we have, and rope cot. That's it. He had nothing much else. A few of his clothes were hanging on that one road
And
tied across.
that was after the smithy work or before?
After, when he returned from there, when he returned from Bombay and all that, the smithy had gone off and here new developments have taken place. I think Harpagon started as a necessity when Golconda was being built. Udar had by then come also. So things had changed here. So he went up. He lived in Ambabishu Garden for some time and then shifted off to that place.
La Fauchère.
Le Faucheur.
Le Fauchère.
The Faucheur is the harvester, the cutter.
Right.
So it was called La Faucheur.
La Fauchère.
Here we must be on La Fauchère, La Fauchère. It comes like that. So he used to go there. He had an old bicycle, not bicycle. And he lived in that hut. And by then he had about 3 or 4 dogs along. These ordinary dogs. They would all be in that same hut with him. They would lie down under the cot. He had gunny sacks for their bed, I mentioned that because often Norman and I used to go.
Oh, Norman.
Yes. Just we used to go cycling and visit him also. So he would, when we went, sometimes we went at night even, and he would offer us some tea. He had that old stove he had, pumping up stove, and then God knows from where he got that tea. Ashram used to give, but it has kept there for how long we don't know. And some chipped old cups. These cups were often broken cups he has gathered somewhere and glued them up and all. There was no electricity there. So he had lanterns, kerosene lamps. Those glass chimneys,
Yes, I remember.
Those also were broken ones with cement. He has put them up. So we asked him, why don't you get a new one for this? There are 3 pieces you have stuck together. He says, can you guarantee me that the other one will not break? I said, no, it will all right, you carry on. He said, all right. So he would, if we went often, he would ask us, he would give us the tea. Then if we wanted a pillow, he would ask, his dogs were there, no? They had their pillows. He would tell one of them to give us that pillow. So that dog would shift Kakudi, Mousi, these were the names I remember.
Of the dogs.
He would ask them to move and they would move out and we offered them the pillows. We took this.
Such a simple life.
Then some accident happened. While I don't know exactly how, he broke his thigh bone. In those days there was no Jipmar and all. He was taken to Madras and got it set there and some operation, something they did. But it was not well done. So he came back, he had a limp. He could not cycle. So there he was, and Manoranjan's son, they were the in charge in La Fauchère and all this. They used to give him something to probably arrange some bread and all. Even the bread and all, what he would soak it and make a paste of it and make a chapati of that. Redo the thing. And some of those village girls, young small girls, used to come and do his little work here and there.
Did he ever mention Sri Aurobindo to you?
Yeah, in this sense, he was very faithful. He would tell us, not a leaf can fall without the mother mother's knowledge. We heard it, and he was true. He believed it. That week we thought he really believed it, whatever our faith said or no. Or,
Yes. Did he met Sri Aurobindo, no?
Sri Aurobindo and mother is same like that. You mentioned Sri Aurobindo. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Because Sri Aurobindo, that mentioned, I think you are referring to that, when once somebody reported that he eats one loaf of bread.
Yes, yes.
So Sri Aurobindo in his own humorous way or something, oh, humanly impossible, he said. So that was told to him, Manibai. So Manibai didn't know much English, and also he said, Sri Aurobindo said, humanly impossible. That means I am not human. So he stopped eating that loaf. So this was reported back to Sri Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo sent back word, no, I was just joking. He should go back to his old diet. So he lived like that here. Then when he was shifted later on to Lofosher and all that, he was living there. By then he was not eating so much. He became little frail. But the big stature was there, big height was there, and big eyebrows. And so he would go around. He was given night duty. So daytime he would come away on his cycle, dining room, have his food here, lie down somewhere in dining room veranda or somewhere, and take some bread and go back to, for the night duty, he would go back to his little hut there. And he had these 2-3 dogs, three at least, along with him, a thick stick. By now they had given him a torch also. So he made the torch into more powerful one by adding a tin piece, and giving more cells, and his own contraption. He put a wire there to make the switch, so that it gives more brighter light. It was a 3-cell torch. He made it to a 6-cell torch.
Right.
So when we went, he would say, Mona, our late Mona, he was a very kind-hearted person. He would often help like this. So when we were going there, he would send with us some extra kerosene or something for him. So we'd go and give, and he would offer his cup of tea. So actually one day I took Parul. She is very hygienic, very fussy with her. So I was going down cycling there. So she came, she said, I'll come with you. I said, you come. He will offer tea. Not in nice porcelain cups and all this thing. He will offer, I will not refuse. What you want to do is your affair. So she came. So when we went, he invited and gave us a cup of tea. One of the old cups he had. She took it quietly.
She took it. Very good. I wanted to ask you next if you could talk about Dilip Kumar Roy, because so many things are told about him, but you knew him personally.
No, personally, Dilip Kumar Roy was out of my range of thought or my sort of person that I met. We went to his song, he used to sing in that house was his, that treasure, which is now Treasure Nursing Home, was his house.
Oh, that was his house?
Yes, it was his own personal house. Downstairs he had given it, as other ashramites used to live. He used to live upstairs. So sometimes there would be a musical soiree there, then we would go and attend. We did not much appreciate his singing. That was, as young people or young children, we were not allowed to stay out long at night. After playground, dining room, eat and come back. But this was an occasion where we were allowed to go and spend a little longer. So we used to go and not hear his song, we'd play about it behind in the veranda or somewhere. But he didn't mind so much. Maybe he heard little noise, but once one of us fell asleep behind and his song was over and people had gone. Then he came and saw one of us boys, I don't remember who, asleep. Hey, Otto, he said, drove us home. So
he was a kind man, you felt, or not?
Quite kind in this sense, at least we had no occasion, or even there's no the common ground where we met as children, and he was a big man, and he was not always here. Only when we saw here that dress, big awkward dresses used to wear, like sadhu saw, even dhoti, and he would go for a walk. Oh. That's all we saw for him. Then he went over, because he could never, I think, he could not really accept the mother as others.
I read his books.
Though he would go for the pranams and all that, but he never really surrendered himself to her as he could to Sri Aurobindo. There were a few about like that in those days when the mother first came. So he came for the pranam, general blessing, but went off. Then I think after 1950, sometime a little longer, sometime he stayed here, then he used to go and come, and then he went and settled. Even when he was here, there was that lady, I forget her name.
Sahana? No. His friend?
Yes, one lady.
Yeah, I remember. Yes.
She
I never met them.
She had a young son also. They were his, let's say, disciples or something. Then they all shifted off to Pune somewhere. I heard he started an ashram like that. And
of all of these people, who do you remember the most and who did you like the most?
Oh, like most I cannot, because somebody I like more. I think this one, Pranabda is not there. Pranab. See, I was with them all right, but the close person I was with is Nishikanta.
And I wanted to know more about him, because when I first came, Aurobindo Basu took me to Nishikanta's birthday party. And I only met him that one time. He looked like a great Chinese emperor.
But Nishikanto, I never imagined as a Chinese emperor, but a dreamy sort of person, big eyes, half like that, and always taking little snuff those days. Many people took a little advice. I snatched away that snuff box from what is all this dirty habit here. So I was very close to him.
Oh.
I looked very close because he was ill much of the time.
All the time, yes.
Because even when he joined here, he was told that I think Nalinida went and told him when he wanted to join that you are here, and outside you might have gained more fame, and here if you are there, the fame may be there, but you will have physical suffering. He said, no matter, I am staying here. So he had this eternal cold, first thing, which always blocked, and taking this snuff didn't help much, but they got this habit, he had it. And then he had, at one time he contracted TB also. And then he had diabetes was far gone, a big.
How old were you when you knew him?
Well, this is, I can't say exactly, 20 years. Oh, I must have been in my 40s, late 40s. He passed away in, I think he passed away in somewhere in the 70s he passed away.
In
1970.
1970. I met him in 1961.
Mm-hmm. But Srivananda had complimented, he said he is a Brahmaputra of inspiration. And I had given him, and one of his poems, Srivananda himself had translated into Bengali poems into English. It's a nice poem, you should read. If you get to read it, you should read the English. The king and the beggar, Kangal, something like that is. Then he didn't know much English. He could just broken English he could speak, and much of it Bengali only. But even then, with the rhythm sense and whatever he had, one or two English poems also he has written.
Yes.
But if I didn't know any Bengali to appreciate his Bengali poems,
Yes.
I got friendly with him. He used to be invited in our house if there was any party. And my uncle, this is my uncle with the beard. This
is your uncle?
Yes. He used to come there, and he was a good cook himself, and he would eat also nicely. He could cook. So,
was it in the same house here?
No,
a different place.
Different house. Yeah. They would come and eat, and time, these vadas and all vada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You look this and nobody is looking, he pocket it to take home. So my uncle saw, hey, you fool, your pocket is going. Why didn't you say so? So they told him take out, and in another little vessel he would give him some to take home.
I understand that he loved to eat.
Yeah, he loved to eat, and but his diabetes was so far gone he couldn't take anything, because I used to give duty for him. So at night I used to go and look after him. I used to give his when he wants to go to his urine, I used to give the pot. And that, even that pot we had to keep with DDT powder around. The ants would come. There's so much sugar in it.
Oh my gosh.
And
I never heard that. Interesting.
Yes. And at night he is a great man, but actually after, when later on I could not give every night, so I had gathered one or two boys to give also duty at night to him. Swadesh, and they knew Bengali, they could appreciate it. Sometimes I would drop in at daytime just to talk to him and all. But his talks and all I cannot publish. What you call?
Salty.
Yes.
Salty. Interesting.
So, actually Swadesh gave, after his passing away, Swadesh gave a talk in the playground about him. They asked me to give a talk also. I said, short talk I can give. They said, no, yours more will come. I said, that I cannot give. General, a few boys I can go and talk to you later. I said, but it is all right like that. So,
of course, Sri Aurobindo and Mother knew everything.
Oh, yes, they knew everything.
Sure. Can you tell me a bit about your uncle?
My uncle was, you see, he was a PWD engineer in Madras of those days. So every darshan he would come once, at least for that one day, and come and go back. It was even known that if he came, he was called Pantulu here, Subramaniam Pantulu, but everybody know him as Pantulu. So once Pantulu comes, Sri Aurobindo used to tell the mother, now that Pantulu has come, you can close the door. As if that was close the door. The darshan is over. They're sitting there now. Close the door.
He waited for him to come.
Looked like that.
Looked like it. Yes.
So I think I mentioned even there, his boss, whoever was there, did not give him a leave for that one day even. No, darshan you cannot do. He said, all right, I am resigning from today, and came off. Twice it happened, but they took him back on his job. So he was a fiery gentleman. Once he gets going, there is no boss, no fire thing. We were so frightened of him.
Oh.
When he is at home, nobody else talks to him, we talk in whispers. He is there. He and my father, the two brothers, and his wife and my mother, the two sisters. Two brothers got married to two sisters. So we are closely knit family one. So I came over here with them in 1945 here. Then of course in 1950 when Sri Aurobindo passed away, many people had got a bit shaky in their what you call faith or whatever. So some left and some went, and they said we were also being told, no, you see, you can do what sadhana now you will do. Go out and study, come back and finish, the whole thing. Later on you can come and settle in here.
People were saying that.
Some people.
Some people, yes.
Not all.
Yes. Did many people leave after Sri Aurobindo passed away?
I can't tell you offhand, but some did leave.
Some did leave. So, more about your uncle.
Yeah, he came and you see, he was when he was back, not here, there, somewhere Nellore or somewhere, he used to go out for his work, and one day, they are written there also, he used to go in that single horse, it's called Jhatka, he had a Jhatka, used to go with that. So, previous night it had rained, so there was a puddle of water in there, and when that reflection fell on the horse's eyes, it reared up a little, and this man is sitting he slipped out and just fell, just near the house only. So he went inside the house. So his mother was there, luckily. So what happened? He said, give me a glass of water. So she went in to get a glass of water, and he had a cane with a sword inside the cane, which I possess now. So he brought out that sword. He was angry on the horse. It reared up like that, dropped him down. So he was going to kill the horse.
Fiery man.
So angry, all reasoning is gone. So the horse driver is there. He's telling, yeah, don't. Horse is pleading, yeah, you get out of my way. Na? In the meantime, his mother brought a glass of water and saw this scene, this man with the sword and the driver nearly in front of him. He said, what's the matter? He said, I'm going to kill the horse, he says. She caught him. She was his mother, so she took her sword. Don't be mad, get up. And so the horse was saved, you see. So here also when he came, his temper was there. He was given charge of the printing press had started new that time. Mm-hmm. So he was given in charge of the binding department there. So they didn't know cycling, nothing. So he used to go out. Morning he would finish his breakfast at home, walk down there, finish, and before all the other workers, he will reach there, keep their things all ready, their working place, and once the work is over, he will walk back. 11:30, he will come home, he'll have his lunch and have a little nap. By 1:30 or before that, he is off again there. Then he returned, if there is some extra work, he returns after 5:30 sometimes.
Namaste, and thank you, Bhatti. Wonderful afternoon. Most enjoyable. See you when I return.
Yes, surely.
Thank you.